So in this segment, we're going to be taking a second go at trying to explain the situation in Dover and Calais. Now, I have spoken to someone at the Haulage Association. So I have spoken to someone at the Road Haulage Association. Sorry, words struggling right now. And basically, what they've said is that it's predominantly down to the P&O issue and them sacking 800 workers, rather than the Brexit issues like GVMS and Operation Brock. What I'd add to that is I know people are going to argue that the P&O situation happened partially as a result of Brexit, where P&O lost a lot of money because the land bridge is shifted to Ireland. I think regardless of that, I think P&O would have still done this because it's purely profit driven, and if I do think it's because of Brexit, P&O are able to sack workers without going through the unions, etc. It's not down to Brexit; it's down to the UK's weak laws, weak employment laws, etc. All P&O had to do was go through the unions and offer redundancy. They chose not to go through the unions, but they still offered redundancy. So we'll see what happens when they go to court. But the guy, I think, is like the CEO or whatever of P&O, the chief executive, said, "It's illegal. I don't care. Do something." It was a joke. So this is from Simon Jones of the BBC. Now, on reports ferries have been leaving Dover half empty, DFDS says there were periods yesterday where freight traffic could not get through the port fast enough. The Port of Dover are aware of this, and all parties continue to work hard on improving traffic flow through the city. Through the port. And DFDS, they're a freight company as well, like P&O, but obviously not as bad as P&O. And so the government are saying they're trying to figure out what's going on. What DFDS said is there were periods where freight traffic could not get through the port fast enough, which is why they were empty. Now, as someone has pointed out in the comments, I can't bring the comment up, but what they said was Set Yever said that you can change one ferry's timetable to allow extended loading times. You may have to alter all sailings from the port. Also, longer loading reduces carrying capacity on the route. You'll need more ships. So I think for the most part, what they are saying is that they have schedules to keep, and because the Port of Dover is smaller than the Calais port, essentially it's harder to get more freight onto the ships because there are less loading bays. And what that means is because DFDS have agreements and contracts with people to be at certain ports at certain times, it's harder for them to allow more UK freight onto the ships purely because of that. Calais being a bigger port, what it means is it allows more loading bays, and I think the French are probably way more organised than the people at Dover. No offence, but you have a lot of new and junior staff that would be at the Port of Dover who wouldn't be ready for this stuff, compared to the French who've been preparing for this since the Brexit result came in. So it just shows you the difference between the two. So for the people who think Brexit is the point because what's it called, ferries are half empty, it's because DFDS, for whatever reason, I think maybe other freight companies are refusing to take on former P&O customers. P&O, so DFDS, this is from the 13th of April. DFDS has no availability for P&O customers between the 15th of April and the 17th of April. Please do not proceed to the port without a confirmed reservation. Contact P&O ferries for alternative travel arrangements. So saying, contact P&O for them to sort something out for you. So, just because you see pictures of empty ferries, it doesn't necessarily mean that, this is solely down to Brexit. It's the port struggling to deal with traffic. Obviously, that's a result of the GVMS system being slower. It was offline. It's only come online on Monday, I believe. And so the GVMS system being offline, it led to manual checks being done or slower checks, which is something that I did speak to someone about the Road Haulage Association. But even then, even if the GVMS system was operational, I think they still would have faced certain problems, bottlenecking issues, with I think freight increasing over the last couple of weeks as well, in the run up to the Easter break, with shops needing more supplies to prepare for the holidays. So I guess it kind of makes sense. Brexit does play a part in this. It's the degree to which it plays a part that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. It looks like traffic is kind of opening back up again, and some of the roads are clear, which would coincide with the GVMS system coming online. So it's difficult to really say, what exactly is going on here. I am struggling, and for anyone who wants to say, oh, it's Brexit or it's P&O, it's not as simple as one reason. It's a mix of them. We've seen, like I said, spoke to the Road Haulage Association. what the person had told me was that this was 70% down to P&O. And so that kind of debunks part of the Brexit argument. I know the P&O issue happened around the 18th of March, but just because it happened back then, it could have been reasons why we haven't seen the impacts until about a week or two later on. I mean, they don't do round the clock, they don't do proper checking of the traffic situation in Dover. So it probably was the case that traffic was initially really bad, and then once it got to a certain crisis point, that's when the media started covering it. That could be my guess. And again, it's speculation on my part, but we do our best to do educated guesses on the channel, and that's what it feels like to me anyways. So Operation Brock, where lorries heading to Dover queue on one side of the M20 was put in place last week. It was brought in to deal with heavy congestion exacerbated by P&O ferry routes being suspended. National Highway said parts of the M20 have now reopened, with others due to follow subject to traffic conditions. So it talks about the specific roads, which are junction 10A and 11 on the coastbound M20 reopened. Junctions 8 and 9 are expected to follow. So a lot of the roadways leading in towards Dover and the motorways are opening back up, which is a good thing for motorists, and it does show you that the situation isn't as bad as it was a few days ago or last week. Nikki Potts of National Highway said scaling it back is a sensible response to the changing outlook and restores capacity on the motorway in time for the weekend, especially as people are going to, maybe go see family or go away for a weekend. Bad weather, Easter holidays, the P&O ferries routes being suspended have all led to congestion around Dover, triggering Operation Brock. There have also been problems with the IT system for customs checks at the UK's busiest port following Brexit. And I think we may not have seen problems this big had the GVMS system been online and they could do the faster checking, which would have reduced the average lorry time in the port of Dover. I think that's a key fundamental problem as well. We can't gloss over that, but I think the P&O thing maybe is more to do with it. The Kent Resilience Forum previously told the BBC the problems had created a perfect storm of travel disruption around Dover, the worst it has been since 2020. Operation Brock normally has the capacity for 2,000 lorries, but it's been holding up 4,000 according to the forum, which manages emergency planning for the county. So you can see it's pretty bad over there. There's a couple other things that I did want to talk about down here, which is several issues converge. So, they talk about Dover, P&O, they talk about the IT system as well. You've got the loss of capacity was exacerbated by 10 days of technical problems with government customs. So the Independent are putting it more towards the P&O stuff rather than the Brexit stuff. And again, you could say it's getting, for me at least, it's harder to argue the Brexit stuff is the key problem, the number one issue. It definitely feels like the P&O thing, especially when you speak to the people actually on the ground who have to deal with this stuff. HMRC had issues with the GVMS system for customs declarations needed by hauliers, so drivers lack scannable barcodes needed for rapid checks for lorries for several days. So it is much quicker, the GVMS system. They're not just waving lorries through, they are still checked. It's just more difficult to check, which adds time, especially given the volume of lorries going through. Richard Ballantyne, the head of the British Ports Association, said P&O ferry suspension had been the main cause of the traffic congestion, but conceded it was partly down to Brexit scenarios. I'm guessing he meant to say as well. HMRC shows that the number of UK forms exported to the UK fell 33% during 2021 because it's simply not worth it for certain companies because of the extra costs, etc. And the chances are sometimes that the person buying the stuff in the EU won't even get it because of paperwork mistakes and other things. So kind of to sum up the video, which is Brexit is a factor in this. The GVMS system being down is a big factor in this, but I think the biggest factor is the P&O situation. Services down by a third. You've got a situation where even the other companies can't pick up the slack for whatever reason. Maybe France aren't facing as much problems as I am. The person I spoke to that said that Calais is facing issues, but it's nowhere near as bad as us because I think the Calais port is bigger, so it does allow more loading opportunities for other companies, so they don't have to be as delayed whilst when they leave the UK. Because of the limitations of the Dover port, there's not as much access for traffic to go onto the ferries. At least that's the way I'm reading into it. Again, I could be wrong. I'll take an L on this happily because it feels like we don't have all the pieces. That's the problem, and it's hard to put everything together. It's not a full picture, if that makes sense, because you've got a situation where ferries are leaving half empty, and DFDS, they could make a buck off this and sell more access to former P&O customers, but they also have contracts and things like that, and you'd be a very angry DFDS customer if your ferries were delayed because they were trying to, pick up P&O customers, etc. That would be a fundamental issue. And we know for a fact that DFDS have been refusing P&O customers, even though they've been leaving partially empty. And I think it's for that reason, because, the Dover port is small. That means less accessibility for lorries to go onto ferries, and P&O, rather than wanting to make a lot of money off this, have contracts they want to adhere to by the feel of it. Anyways, but I'm going to leave it there. This is my second goal on this. I really don't want to have to do a third video trying to explain this again for a while, just because it's hella confusing, and we're relying on journalists who speak to multiple different sources to try and figure out what's going on. And then even then, people can say, oh, it's always Brexit, or it's always this, and you're just like, what have you read? What research have you done? I've seen some pretty vicious statements towards people on Twitter who have tried to kind of explain the situation. Yes, journalists make mistakes. That's that happens, but attacking them doesn't make any sense, especially for the mistakes of their organization, the group they work for. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.